staff does a great job in that program
you.
together, so I look forward to it if I can make it.
My favorite part is that last time we had this kind of like a trail mix bar, so everybody was over there getting like nuts and peanuts and M&Ms and dried fruit. But anyway, there are other things that are more fun. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Well, I would just sort of echo, there may be other priorities, but having attended a few, I think it's a great opportunity for kind of public education that otherwise there aren't forums to get to. So recognizing there may be other priorities, I think, though, keeping in mind that it really can be an opportunity for public education. It's certainly been very educational for me when I've gone. And, but there was one question I wanted to ask, Colleen. The airport money that you referred to, is that sort of neutral amongst the transit alternatives, so that it would contemplate the potential trolley expansion as well as the other forms? So there's not any there's not any foreclosing of any of the four alternatives that I recall being presented?
That's correct. In fact, the way we're looking at the memorandum of agreement right now is that if a transit option doesn't come to fruition, then actually considering an outbound roadway as another option. So it's really kind of a whole, like, the parties involved in the agreement need to sort of agree on what the transportation improvements will be.
Gotcha.
So it really leaves all the options on the table, not just the transit piece, but even the roadway pieces as well.
Great, thanks.
Great.
To me, that airport, EIR being, I guess not open up, but to include a portion of the transit represents a significant improvement. We're taking a little bit, just a little teeny bit of the work and putting it on another project. So we must be pretty confident that it's going to happen.
Yeah, it's, they've set aside $500 million for improvements that are not necessarily just associated with the airport. And so that's a significant change from previous work that the airport has done. So I think that agreement with FAA and the two airlines, that mainly Southwest Airlines and Alaska Airlines has some of the bays there, or the terminal usage. So it's a huge change from what the previous environmental document had in terms of mitigation.
Colleen, thank you very much.
Yeah, my pleasure.
All right, with that, we will go ahead and move on to the consent calendar. And the first item is a presentation about the senior mini grants.
So this is a consent agenda, so the items 4 through 9 are on consent, so they're not really presentations, but if you'd like to pull or ask questions about any of them.
That's what I meant to say. Any of the members interested in pulling a consent item for discussion? Hearing none, we'll take all 4 of those items under advisement. Thank you very much.
We do need a vote. So
on the consent calendar?
Correct. So number 8 is an action item for your approval, so we would need a vote on that.
Okay, let's pull that item and explain it to us.
Okay, sure. So item 8 is my item, and it has to do with your meeting calendar for calendar year 2020. Unfortunately, when we brought this to you back in October, there were 2 dates, the May and the October date, that were not the second Wednesday of the month, which is when ITAC typically meets. That was an oversight on our part, so this is a technical correction, so your reapproval would be required.
Okay, so in our vote on the consent calendar, we'll be approving this. It's not a change to the calendar, it's a correction. Revision to the calendar.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and having thoroughly botched the consent calendar, we're going to vote on the consent calendar, approving item 8.
Correct.
And taking the rest under advisement. Do we have a motion on the consent calendar? To approve. Move to approve. Second? Second. All in favor of approving the consent calendar? Unanimous. that, we'll move on to the reports section of the agenda. I believe we have a report here on the, from the Transportation Committee.
Well, it's actually my item that I bring to you every month, which is just an update on the actions that the board or the Transportation Committee has taken on any Transnet-related items. And really, the only update I have is that you might recall that at your last meeting, Andre presented the proposed 2019 bond issuance and refunding. And the board did approve the refunding, and that was a very successful transaction, which I'll let him speak about. The new bond issuance, which you'll recall, was for the bike program. That was postponed, and that'll be heard by the board this Friday. But with that, I will let Andre talk about the success of the refunding.
Thanks, Ariana. So we actually went back to New York, and we kind of killed two birds with one stone. We were there, first of all, to accept the award that the bond buy does on an annual basis. We actually won the award for the Far West, which includes the regions of California, Alaska, Hawaii, Oregon, and Washington. And this was for our GANS deal that we did back that closed in August. The bond buy has certain criteria that you have to meet to win the award, and I think there's 4 or 5 criteria, which we hit all of them. Now, one was the purpose for what it is, and obviously we had green bonds that we issued for the GANS, and the purpose of it was the Mid-Coast Trolley Line, so that's definitely a green bond. And the fact that it was innovative financing, it was a deal that hadn't been done in 20 years. We basically securitized the full FFGA that we got from the federal government, and we actually got an investment grade on it, which is something very difficult to do. And it's something that other agencies throughout the country that have FFGAs can kind of copy. So we basically hit all the check boxes, and it was a very proud moment. It was actually the first time that a self-help county has actually won an award, and I think there were almost 900 and something deals that were done in the region, and for us to win it was something that we're very proud of. So we accepted the award on that Wednesday, and then on that Thursday, while we were there, we actually priced the bonds, the refunding bonds. The board had authorized us to issue up to $600 million. And kind of taking a look at the market and where the rates were, we ended up refunding $442 million of the 600 potential that we had. That's mostly the 2012 bonds and some of the 2014 bonds. Ultimately, we saved $93 million in cash flow savings, which equates to about $3.2 million on an annual basis through 2048. So it's like you refinance your house, you basically save some payments, or payments that we're saving of $3.2 million. So a pretty significant amount that we can obviously build other projects. The overall rate that we got was 3.18%, which is the lowest that we've had on a brand new bond. I think the reason why we jumped into the market when we did is there's a kind of a disconnect where interest rates really fell. The 30-year Treasury went below 2% for a while, and when we issued ours, the rates were approximately 2.12%. We actually got in a very favorable time. Rates have moved up since then. So unfortunately, we weren't able to do the $100 million piece for the bike program, but still, relatively, rates are a lot lower than they were a year ago, so I'm sure we'll go and get some favorable rates. We intend, if the board approves the item on this Friday, we intend to go to the markets the last week in January, so we'll probably report back to the ITALC York River meeting.
Well, thank you very much. Very nice. Is that all good, Vince?
Yeah, I just had one question. I vaguely recall seeing some stuff in the media about how the potential changes in the tax law and the SALT restrictions may have benefited the municipal bond market because of people looking for more tax-exempt income. Have there been any noticeable movements in spreads of municipals relative to treasuries that might be resulting from that? Or I know it's not a laboratory experiment,
yeah.
So it's hard to say what's caused what, but
the one thing I can tell you for sure is, California and New York were hardest hit by the SALT reductions and the limitations, and so the demand has been tremendous for California and New York paper. I mean, for example, the GANs that we did were almost 10 times oversubscribed. And because that, the yield's a little bit higher than our AAA deal. Now, our AAA deal was 2 times oversubscribed. So, when we went into the market, it was the first week in December. It was one of the busiest calendars for the year. Usually there's $8 billion in orders or bonds for sale. There was twice that. But we were the only California deal, and we were the ones that got oversubscribed. So, besides the fact that we're AAA, we've got a good name. I think it has a lot to do with the salt deductions that you mentioned, that California paper is really something that investors who live in California are really going after because of the limitations. So you're absolutely right. That has helped us. What didn't help is the fact that they got rid of advanced refunding. And so that's why we had to do the refunding in a different way. But on the other hand, we got helped by the salt deduction, the limitations. And so I know that when we go and sell these $100 million on flight funds, we'll probably do very well too.
All right, I have a question on sort of this press coverage I thought I saw related to the bike paths and funding. Was there some stories related? I can't remember some shortfalls of funding. For some reason I thought I saw some articles maybe 6-8 weeks ago on bike.
Well, there's been, I think there was a media coverage about where the bike program stands in terms of, how much has been spent, how much has been programmed or identified for the bike program. I think right now the bike program stands at about $270 million or so, but I think over $100 million of that has been spent sort of preparing 70 of the 77 miles to be built. I think about 8 miles of those 70 miles have been built and are open to users. So the rest of it is just getting the projects ready to go from environmental to finished design to get ready for construction.
So that's good news, because for some reason I thought there was some sort of shortfall discussion on the news coverage.
I think that's how they portrayed it, but I think it was just giving more of a status of where does the program stand, how much has been spent, and how much remains to be spent.
And I know we're getting good updates from
Linda Cope, and
Linda,
she's scheduled to come next month as well.
That's super. I was just curious on that. She was here last time, and it sounds like things were going on. That's good. Thank you.
Great. Walter, thank you very much. Congratulations again on the award.
Thank you.
And thank you for saving us money.
You're very welcome. Build more projects.
With that, we'll move on to item 11. Ariana, you done? And Mr. Oliver's presentation. This is an appoint action.
Good morning. Just wanted to follow up on our November report to you on the 2017-28 State of the Commute. Subsequent to that meeting, I believe this committee got together to figure out how you wanted to handle future independent reviews of the annual report. We hope to get back on an annual cycle for State of the Commute reporting. So staff has recommended that, per your recommendation, that a subcommittee of no more than 3 voting members be formed to conduct that independent analysis. And the thought there is that staff will meet with you at a subsequent meeting, probably not during the meeting, but in a separate session. And we can spend, I don't know how much time that would be, all right, Ariana, enough time to engage with staff. We would provide data and pretty much show you how the data that would go into the State of the Commute report that we are proposing. We're developing a 2019 State of the Commute that will cover the calendar year 2019, get us back on cycle for what the ordinance requires us to do, is to provide you an annual report. So we will be ready at that subsequent meeting to provide that data for your independent analysis, so that when we do put the report together with any input that you might provide during that session, that subcommittee, and as well as maybe the larger subcommittee, will be more informed, so that when we're asked to provide that to you, that independent analysis will already be done by a smaller group of the larger committee. So that is the proposal for today, and I guess the action item here is to appoint that subcommittee.
I suppose it would be unfair to appoint the people that aren't here.
Is there a problem?
Three of the four of us.
It's fairly effective, though.
So one note is that I think we were anticipating having the subcommittee meet after your next meeting, so February 12th, immediately following that meeting, so 12 o'clock or so. And in terms of the time commitment, we really don't anticipate it taking more than 1-2 hours, maybe. I mean, certainly you can, possibly, yeah. I mean, unless subcommittee needs to meet another time, but that's how we see it so far. So it should be pretty quick.
I had some nitpicky data questions in your prior presentation, so I think it would only be fair that I volunteer to participate.
Chair?
Chair, whatever, but, so I'd be happy to participate.
I as well. I will go out on a limb here, and the same three that are on the triangle.
Well, Brad, you've got that.
Well, I mean,
He's already done
that
that.
afternoon,
That's a hard
we're
one.
moving the other meeting to the.
Right.
Because we have an
So I was
8:30.
You
trying
have
to.
the performance audit subcommittee at 8:30 that morning, then you have 9:30 ITALK, then you would have
I
12
have to get
o'clock.
back to work at a decent. I'm happy to do it. I just thought that timing may be a little tight for me after the meeting that day. So, but I'm happy to keep the third.
Well, I'd like to do it.
So go ahead.
There
Good.
you go. So we
See,
have,
you should have done it. You should have asked him.
So we have Michael Kenny,
Somebody
Greg
that's- I was only
Sadowski.
messing with you because I had big.
So myself,
Yeah,
Stuart,
I mean, Stuart.
No.
So we need a motion.
I didn't know.
What was that? Question? No? Did you?
Do we need to do like a formal
Not
vote?
yet.
Yes,
So,
you need to do a motion.
Did you just make a motion?
I'd like to make a motion that we appoint myself, Stuart, and Greg to the subcommittee for the transportation system performance audit.
A second that.
And all those in favor?
Thank you. I'll see you in February.
You can't vote for yourself.
All right, so with that, we'll move on to item number 12. It's an information item on the Midcoast trolley. Is Haggerty available?
I am available, but I'm going to ask that Mr. Greg Castellum provide the information. He is now closest on the team for Midcoast.
Perfect. Greg, how are you?
Good to see you again.
Yeah.
All right. Good morning, all. Again, it's a pleasure to be here with you and share some of the exciting news on our Midcoast Corridor project. I am Deputy Project Director in charge of capital management for the project and overseeing not only capital expenditures on the project, but also managing the right-of-way and some of the other coordination activities. So feel free to ask me any questions at the presentation, and let's get on with it. It's an 11-mile extension to our existing trolley system. Essentially, we're utilizing the existing system between Santa Fe Depot to the Old Town Transit Center, and then we'll be adding the new construction activities that's basically north, starting a little bit south of the San Diego River and then proceeding forward along the railroad corridor and whatnot. We're looking at providing 9 new stations, 5 with parking, and we're looking at adding 36 new trolley cars to our fleet to MTS. Revenue service is looking to, we're looking at 2021 at fall time period to complete the project and have it underway. And FTA, the Federal Transit Administration, is our partner on this project. It's a $2.17 billion project, and they're coming in with a little under almost 50%. So we'll talk a little bit about that later. But exciting news. The other thing to share with you is that the project is being delivered by CMGC, Construction Manager General Contractor. That's given us a lot of ability. It's a value-based selection method, and it's been going pretty well and coordinating very well with some of the other improvements. Some of our milestones, we are looking from a heavy construction duration. We've added around a year to the construction period due to inclement weather and some of the field conditions that have happened, but we're still pretty much on track to our baseline of 56 months completing the project. One of our we have Reach 14, we call it, but it's basically the Genesee section of the viaduct that's under construction along Genesee Avenue. That was one that's always kind of going in and out as we proceed forward with construction on a critical path item. So we're managing and watching very closely all the activities associated with that development. And we're looking at completing the majority of that infrastructure by the end of this year. So that's really exciting news. I'll be sharing some of the photos to kind of give you highlights of what's going on throughout the corridor. Another exciting event that we're getting ready and starting to work with MTS on is getting ready to start the testing for revenue service. And so we're looking at a May timeframe in 2021 where we'll actually have trains on the system and start to get some of the testing done, and there'll be a transition period where it comes from the contractor to MTS, and then they'll finalize certifications and whatnot to get everything ready and operating by November timeframe of 2021. And I think I covered that. Final completion, from the contractor's perspective, we're looking at pretty much substantial completion by late summer, early fall. So, and we're still on track to hit that. Some of the success I'd like to share is the Green Line cutover that was recently accomplished. And, that's basically where we will be tying into the existing track that is servicing the Green Line that services Mission Valley Line. And so we completed some switch work and a lot of the track work that was there. So that was a lot of coordination required with the operations of the Green Line, but we got that completed on time. We're moving forward with the Genesee Avenue precast false work elimination of that. You might, if you have the opportunity to drive out there, you'll start seeing that we're starting to take down that false work as we proceed forward with the completion of that viaduct construction. The deck on Nobel Viaduct is on I-5. That was a major pour that we completed in November 18th. I don't know if you guys got to see some of the highlights of, but that was one of the biggest pours we had out there. And it was really exciting. I think we had 650 cubic yards of concrete placed over in one night. We worked very close with Caltrans, got the work accomplished, I think 2 hours ahead of schedule. So that was really important progress for us on that, and that was the last pour for the viaduct construction. La Jolla Underpass continues to move forward. I'll share with you a little picture of that one later in the presentation. And really, as we get through this year, we're going to be finishing most of the infrastructure work and some of the site improvements, retaining walls and whatnot, street improvements. And so we'll be moving forward into more of the communications and systems type work, overhead catenary system work, and certainly more of a focus on wrapping up the stations. Track work at grades and areas you'll see is moving ahead well, and as I mentioned, we're working into or transitioning to our single systems. Vehicle deliveries, we have 26 vehicles here in town already out of 36 that we're looking to purchase as part of this project, and 8 of them have been certified. So that is on schedule. This kind of shows you how we're performing on our supplement here for the Mid-Coast Corridor Transit Project. We're within thresholds. One is funding, it's the blue line, and the red line is the time. As you can see, we're pretty much on track to stay within those thresholds and deliver the project on time and within budget. Here's our disadvantaged business enterprise. Goal is 11.3% on this project. Right now, as shown up here, we're a little shy of the anticipated goal. It's 8.5, but it doesn't include, we are still waiting for some information on November and December, so that will start trending well, but we're still showing that we're trending in the positive direction to achieve that goal, if not exceed that goal. One of our highlights is JML. They are a temporary staffing firm. They started off with 1 employee, providing our contractor with some administration support, help. They have since added 8 more people to the contract and increased the contract from $80,000 to a little over $1 million. And we have also added engineering, safety, and environmental resources to that. So there's a good example of how our DB program is reaching some successes. Here's a graphic that kind of shows us how we're trending on a nationwide average. Is again accidents, on a rate of accidents reported and lost time injury rates. on an annual basis per 100 employees. As you can see, the upper level of 2.5 is much more the trend on a project similar to the Mid-Coast project. You can see we're still trending down. We have over 3.3 million man-hours already logged into this project. And so we continue to vigilantly look for opportunities to continue to improve our accident or eliminate our accident rates as we move forward. And now I'd like to go through just some of the highlighting areas. This is the Bean Street location where we have a traction power substation, and we are in this location here. Just shows that we were working on the morning hours to provide some of the improvements to our overhead catenary system. That's some of the conduit work that needs to be done to service, provide power from our traction power substation at that location. So that was coordinated very closely with SDG&E as well as MCS. This shows the Green Line Y just south of San Diego River. That was the crossover that I was talking about. And the picture to the right shows the deck of our future light rail bridge across San Diego River. You can see we're moving forward with a lot of the conduit and communications work to the right, and you can see some of this area in here. Right here is where we have some of the stirrups that will be supporting the plinths that will support the rail. So that's moving quite well in that general area. If you've had an opportunity to drive through Marina Boulevard, you can see that two of our tracks are already laid down, and we're getting to the final construction of some of the track work in that general area. Over here on the left is the Tecolote Bridge crossing over Tecolote Creek. One of the highlights that we coordinated very closely with the Navy and relocating that fuel line to get that bridge under construction as quickly as we could, and everything went very well and coordinated very well in according with their minimizing impacts to the fuel needs that were being serviced by that monument.
Why does the Navy have a fuel line
We have fuel lines everywhere. They help you.
It goes, I believe,
the air base to the Navy base?
it goes to La Jolla.
You get one through Claremont, right down, it goes right down Balboa and Genesee in that area. There's big fuel lines that go way back.
I suppose it's better than tanker trucks, but it's still, it's hot.
So you,
Sorry to interrupt.
can't mess with them. You do not want to mess with them.
You know, I didn't ask those kind of questions, but now you brought it up. Now I am kind of curious. I was more importantly just trying to make sure we could get it relocated in time. Here's our Balboa site, our station site. We can see that we have our screen wall constructed in this general area that would provide some barrier between the existing low sand tracks that are behind it and our future platform area in here. You can see a lot of some of the earthwork that's going on in this general area. At Balboa Avenue, we have a bridge that's just about near completion, and we're going to be starting some retaining wall work along here shortly. And again, a lot of this infrastructure work we're hoping to complete by the end of this year. This is the location just a little bit, if you're familiar with where Costco is, it's just a little bit north of that location. And we're going to have a tracking power substation positioned right around this location here. There's a maintenance access road that we're going to continue to maintain, the Rose Creek Channel, and this is the light rail bridge that is built just adjacent to the low sand bridge that was underway and also being completed on time. A lot of the, again, retaining wall work is completed to support our light rail, and so the track work will be following shortly after that. The flyover is basically the location where, if you look at these photos, everything in the railroad corridor is on the east side. We are now going to be crossing over this general location here just south of State Route 52, and some of the unique things is that this was a precast type construction integrated with the bridge decks in the bents, and so so that all the deck is poured, and as you can see, we're starting to get ready to start doing again some of the rail work and some of the fine finish work on conduits and placement of walkways and whatnot on that structure. This is at La Jolla Colony Drive. This is our undercrossing, and again, all our crossings are grade separated, so there are no signals or anything else on this 11-mile extension. You can see some of the construction work going on there, and we already have the north side completed. We're finishing up the south side as we go through. Get a lot of coordination, and one of the things I really like to share with everybody as I give these presentations is the support that we get the city, traffic control plans from Caltrans, and all the needs that have to go through, and certainly the outreach to the local residents and in this area of the university as well, to coordinate our traffic control plans. This was a big area where I was talking about that big pour happened in November, and so now this is all, the viaduct is complete, and we're moving forward with track construction as we speak. Here's a picture of that night that it was just going like gangbusters, laying down that, pouring that concrete into the deck. This is a south view of the corridor. This is La Jolla Village Drive, and you can see we come along here as we proceed north. This is going to be an at-grade station at the VA Medical Center. The retaining walls are certainly completed, and we're moving forward now with the light rail station design efforts. Here's Pepper Canyon. This is going to be the station that serves the west side on the academic side of UC San Diego.
Greg, on the left one, I just drove south on 5, and and this is going to go to Alan's questions coming up. The exit on Genesee is on La Jolla Village Drive southbound is terrible in the mornings.
Oh, really?
As far as traffic, because it's just one lane, and then you have to get on La Jolla Village Drive. Is all that late? There's a lot of aggregate that's just sitting there. Is all that from your project, and then how does that relate to that interchange? Has got to be fixed, I'm guessing, here in the next within the next year.
Again, restoring the interchange to what it was previously prior to construction, and it is our project that is impacting that. They were gracious enough to allow us to use some of the areas in that interchange as laydown areas. So I will share that with our.
No, it's really bad. I mean, both southbound exits on Genesee and this one are terrible in the mornings. I'm just curious, and maybe Caltrans is doing the project. Is that interchange being redone underneath that area?
Replaced in kind to where it was when they started. But there is going to be, there's a new auxiliary lane that's being built right now.
Oh, I see that.
Between Genesee and La Jolla. So I think that's probably contributing. We've got narrow lanes in there.
Yeah.
Do you guys have an idea when the target date is for the false work over La Jolla? Because that'll probably be when it kind of goes back.
I know that they're anxious to start getting that completed.
Good.
We'll get that back.
No, I'm just curious.
We hear that complaint a lot.
Yeah.
It's down in
Oh, it's just wondering if that auxiliary lane's probably going to help.
It is. They're making good progress on that.
You know, while we're talking about that particular area, it strikes me that I can't recall what it was like before, but it strikes me that the southbound on-ramp from both La Jolla Village Drive, but particularly Nobel, seems that the merge is like there's a really short runway to the merge. You're nodding your head. Do you know that that's an issue that's going to be rectified when the project's completed, or am I just not remembering that's the way it's always been?
So there's K rail for the southbound off, actually it's La Jolla, and there's K rail for the southbound on, right? So that will, it will be restored back to what it was before construction.
Okay, got it.
Certainly when we open the auxiliary lane that Alan mentions, we know that that is an existing bottleneck, and they got worse with reduced lanes, no shoulder, so that will help out.
Yeah.
Tremendously. Because in the morning, you're correct, in the morning you can see all the cars backing up in the southbound direction.
So, again,
No, it's just, it's not something critical. I'm just amazed there's a pile of broken asphalt that's just sitting there. Just curious what the timing is.
And we're anxious, as Alan mentioned, we have to restore everything in kind to prior pre-construction conditions. And we're anxious, around within a month or so, you're going to start seeing some landscape activity going on as we complete the restoration of the slopes that we've already implemented.
Well, it looks good down. I drive that route all the time. You guys are doing a good job.
Great, thank you. One other thing I wanted to share on Pepper Canyon real quickly is that this was an export job, and the university, we've been working with them for, I don't know, since the beginning, since at least 10 years on this project together, setting the alignments, looking at how this is going to integrate with their future plans and whatnot, and how we can better provide a better transit facility at the end of the day. One of the biggest changes that we were able to provide a lot of that excess material into this Pepper Canyon area. They have basically revamped their game plan. Their planning is now to fill in the canyon, provide, as you can see here, there is another building that they have underway, and we're going to be racing to see who beats who first in this area from a construction perspective. But they're going to have an amphitheater there, and it's really going to be a gateway now from our transit center or transit station to their West Side campus. So it's been really exciting to see how that has changed and how it progresses and continues to progress. This is our second overcrossing over Interstate 5. We completed that, and you can see some of the rail work is now getting completed as we speak on that effort. This is our Voight station. This is Preuss School, which is run by UC San Diego. And then over here to the left is Scripps Hospital property. We worked with the hospital to acquire some of the property needed to support this project, as well as some relocation work for utilities. It also is coordinating construction. As we go through, you can see there's another project right adjacent to us, neighboring this project, that they're building their parking structure. And so we've been very proactive in making certain all the contractors are talking to each other, making certain that coordination is happening. Here's an erection of one of our frame systems for the elevator system that are being erected. And this is a pedestrian bridge that will be linking our elevator station to the Preuss side of the Voight Street. As we mentioned, we're starting to take down a lot of the false work. Here's a picture of some of the support members being taken off of the area on Genesee Viaduct. This was a precast design. The idea was widen the streets first, and then after you've completed all the widening, then you would minimize impacts to the Genesee Avenue traffic circulation and pedestrian bicyclists as well. And so now we're going to be cleaning up that area, and we're basically going to be focusing, all this remaining construction will be up on top on the bridge deck, and then certainly in the medium we'll be starting to put some concrete barriers and finalizing the landscape as we go through there. Here's a good shot of this La Jolla Country Day, and it kind of shows you the whole viaduct as we proceed out of UC San Diego and into the middle of Genesee Avenue. This is our executive drive station, and we're getting ready to do the pours for the concrete pours for our platform decks. So that's going to be coming within a matter of weeks. We're getting close to that. And we've also started some of the elevator systems on both ends. The framing has been constructed, and we're getting ready to start doing the pedestrian bridge connections to the actual platforms in the elevator station in the middle. If you're also wondering, there used to be a bridge that used to connect pedestrians all the way across Genesee Avenue here prior to the construction of this project. We will still provide that through the access of the light rail station, and we're providing amenities on both sides and improvements to make certain that can happen. And then here is our UTC station. Again, here this is the transit center. That was a separate project that we initiated. Well, actually, Westfield is the one that built it for us. We worked in conjunction with them to get that done. One of the neat things that we were able to do is do some of the foundation work for our pedestrian bridges. They actually, we worked out an agreement where they were able to do some of that work for us so that we wouldn't have to go and disrupt the operations for our transit center. Also, we included the electrical and mechanical rooms and everything else that we need to facilitate our UTC transit center or light rail trolley station incorporated into this design. So all the conduits in place, so you're not going to see us ripping up a lot of this work that's already been accomplished. In addition, we worked with adjacent developers, and we had a late modification that provided time and cost savings to the entry into our actual access on the west side of the UTC station. And so that construction is now well underway, and it's really a good effort on both sides. It's going to be compatible with the future potential development of that shopping mall, as well as provide a better circulation for our transit patrons. We continue to monitor all our risks that are ahead of us. As I said, we're really transitioning out of the major construction type civil activities and going into more of a systems type work, and certainly focus on station work. Right away is still at one of the areas that we're monitoring. We still are in 9 negotiations out of 43 properties that we're acquiring. So we've hired concurrently, we went through a condemnation process, and we're still negotiating, and we're hoping that we can avoid condemnation on all parcels, but we'll wait and see. So some of the higher priced ones are still out there. So we're monitoring that as we move forward. Certainly with, there's always a potential for goodwill claims, and that is something that is not included as part of our federal financing, and so we're managing that. We've been proactive with some of the tenants to try to ensure that we can avoid any kind of future goodwill claims. Fez Street traction power substation, we will continue to work with SDG&E to try, we are pretty much close on completing the final design and the acceptance with SDG&E on the location and the actual design work. We will then be working through with SDG&E to go and get authority to proceed forward with the purchasing of the easements required or the land real estate transactions, and get that traction power substation started and constructed as soon as possible. And of course, there's always unforeseen conditions, unknowns, and just general construction activities that might surface. We still have a very strong contingency as we continue to move forward in construction. And I mentioned pretty much where we stand on right-of-way. And another thing that we're really focusing now is not only when we have freeway closures or any kind of other activities that could, possibly impact the local community, we also are working closely with other developers and coordinating all the construction activities and really trying to get the good word out that, hey, we're coming. This thing is just about getting to where we need to be, and you're going to have a trolley system and service usable within a couple of years. So that concludes my presentation. If you have any questions, let me know.
Thank you, Craig. That's great.
Good
Questions?
job.
Thank you.
I had one, this may be more of an MTS question, Greg, but you might know the answer. With regard to the cars, I know that it was like a couple of years ago, or maybe even earlier, that there was some public disappointment expressed that given the length of the blue line, that at least at the time the cars being ordered did not have restrooms in the cars. I don't know if you're familiar with this as an issue. I'm just curious if the cars, if there's been any accommodation in terms of cars that have not been received yet, if that's been taken into account, or?
I'm not familiar, John.
I can respond to that to the best of my knowledge, but the light rail system has never had restrooms
Right.
on the cars, and the new vehicles that they're ordering continue not to have them. So yeah, it's an issue that typically comes up with MTS about restrooms, either at their stations or on the vehicles. More emphasis at the stations.
Right.
MTS's policy has been for years that they'll supply restrooms at stations where some other entity is going to maintain those restrooms. And so, point in fact, on Midcoast, the university wanted restrooms at the stations, and they have an MOU with MTS to maintain them. So the agency at Sandag is building restrooms at the Pepper
That was going to be
Canyon
my next question.
and Boyd Station, but none of the other stations because there's no operator. And it's just from a maintenance and operations and cost perspective, and I think liabilities perspective, MTS hasn't taken that burden on. There's a few stations, I believe, still at Old Town and maybe at E Street in Chula Vista, where a private operator runs the restrooms as part of occupying space that MTS is leasing out. I think, and maybe even Elkhorn Transit Center.
Gotcha.
Those are the three that I've been aware of in the past.
Because a ride down from the border all the way up to UCSD, whatever, is like an hour plus.
It's going to be 70 minutes.
Yeah, so, okay, got it. Thanks.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Craig, can you store any trains at the north end? Will there be like anything remotely like a yard or?
Not a yard. Everything has been designed to come down back to the storage downtown at Imperial. And so, so that's really, we have plenty of storage there. We assess that as part of the project. We do have a tail track, so during event periods, MTS can bring in extra cars and have them stored on that tail track to facilitate any additional express routes or whatever they would need to do.
So the first, for instance, on the first train in the morning southbound, the crew would have to come up south, just deadhead up at 4 in the morning or something, right?
I believe,
That's
yes,
interesting
they
how they were.
pretty much start taking off out of the yard in various directions to get to the end point and then start coming
Yeah,
down.
it's interesting. You wouldn't have some crew, or you wouldn't have something that's sitting there the night before that. I guess
There must be a
there's no
plan
train.
somewhere for North County 20 years from now.
Maybe so. Thank you.
All right, we will move on to item 13, Mr. Cossup's item for the North Coast Corridor Program update.
Good morning. I found a good use for cell phones. We can talk to our construction guys real time. They wanted to get back to you on La Jolla Village. That's a crusher plant that they're recycling material there. And so we haven't ever taken any lanes there. It's the same number of lanes as it was originally, but they are a lot narrower. And as Arturo said, the K-rail is really causing problems. So he's going to get back to us on when the contractors anticipate.
So is it just one right now? It's one lane going into that turn and getting off that exit?
Yeah.
Has it always been one?
It's
lane?
always been one lane.
That's interesting.
But the aux lane will
And then
help.
it goes into 2 lanes. You turn the corner,
Yeah.
the signal opens up to
I
2
think
or 3
those,
lanes.
those
Yeah.
barricades make it feel like
Make
it's
it
less
tight.
dangerous,
Yeah.
because it's
Definitely.
really tight.
But the
And I
problem
think
is
one of the
that-
problems is when they stop now, they're blocking the general purpose lanes because they're queuing up in the
Yeah.
through lanes, but the aux lane will move the queue to the outside,
Yeah.
so.
Thank you.
We will get back to you on when the crusher station.
I'm
is,
just curious. Thank you.
we'll get done.
We're gonna try it.
It's the turn of the decade. So before we dash off and talk about the construction job on I-5, I wanted to maybe back up a little bit and just talk about what's happened in the last 10 years on NCC. Just to kind of remind folks that the construction that you see out there is part of a very unique approach that we all undertook to both plan and construct projects differently on that corridor. It's an integrated system of rail, environmental, community enhancement, active transportation. And when I say we all undertook that, it's SANDAG, Caltrans, NCTD, and the regulatory agencies were a part of that, right? This was a $6 billion vision that we undertook about 10 years ago. That $6 billion was a 30-year vision, and really revenue constrained as much as anything. And so, there were a couple of events in the last 3 or 4 months since we last met that really sort of emphasize how that approach is working. I think it's been a huge success in my mind. And so we just kind of wanted to highlight those things. If you hadn't heard, the last major coastal permit for the first phase of improvements was approved in December. Arturo Jacobo, our project manager, he got that. It was another unanimous decision by the Coastal Commission. And so that basically permits the last phase of freeway construction from Palomar Airport Road up to 78. And we'll talk a little bit more about that piece later in the presentation, but that was a major milestone. We've got improvements at the Poinsettia Rail Station wrapping up, and so we anticipate a ribbon cutting in February. So we've got some highway improvements, we've got some rail improvements, and then also one of the unique things of this approach, of this integrated approach, is we're working with the lagoons to either restore them, or in some of the cases of the lagoons, what they really needed was maintenance money, right? They had been restored in previous projects, but they really had no money to keep them managed and to continue to dredge them over time, and so the region and this program contributed to that. This is an example of that. This is at Bataquitas in Carlsbad. You can see this sand out here is just kind of what's accrued over time. We're working with the Lagoon Foundation, State Parks, or the state agency that's administering the lagoon, and they're going to be dredging it this month. So again, this sort of partnership between the resource agencies and the region. This is EMP money, sales tax money that's going towards this program. So next month, that sand dunes won't be there. So what did we get for the last 10 years of development? And it's basically a high-level dashboard that tries to highlight what the region got. Now, some of this is still under construction, but really by late 21, 22, these will all be in place. But you got over 1,200 acres of restored or preserved resources. We added about 7 miles of double track to the system. We added are currently adding about 20 miles of active transportation, bikes and sidewalk enhancements, and then over 20 miles of express lanes. And I put it in context to over the last 10 years the region continues to grow, right, both in residents and jobs. And so to some extent, I mean, we had a problem out there in mobility when we started in 2010. We're trying to keep up with additional demands that happen both on the rail and highway side. But I think we're making good progress. One of the things we owe you, and you have your state of commute. This is what you got in sort of infrastructure improvements. What do you get in terms of performance improvements? Hard to say right now because we're still under construction, so that kind of blurs that. So by 22, we'll be able to say, hey, travel times have improved, and so hold on to those questions. But they're all good questions. This is the portfolio of projects that have been delivered or are in construction over that 10 years, and you see it's about $1.6 billion of improvements. And you see again a blend of active transportation, highway, and rail improvements. So that's just kind of an overview, a little bit of overview, just to remind you that it is a 10-year, it is an overall integrated system of improvements. And I think the region, industry, everyone's to be applauded by the success of the program, I think. So what's happening out in construction? This is what you guys see mostly as you drive through, right? This is about a $850 million construction project. We talked about it in the past. It has the double track, extension of the carpool lanes, and the restoration of the lagoon. It's nearing about 50% complete, and as we've talked about, some of the elements are already open to the public, right? So the double track at Santa Leonard is complete. Cardiff Rail Trail is complete, and we're approaching about halfway complete on the freeway as well. And we have some photos to highlight that. Similar to Mid-Coast, we still have we consider a good contingency of about $35 million. But we've still got some major risks in front of us, so we think that's about right for about $400 million left to be spent under the construction project. So what's it look like? We've been moving the ramps around, and this is sort of, it may not look it, but this is a major milestone coming our way as a region. So what's going to happen is that by the end of this month, early February, these lanes, the main lanes, will be moved to the new bridges. And so we're actually realigning the ramps so that they connect to the new main lanes, right? And then we'll be able to tear down these existing bridges and replace them. So by early February, the main lanes will be over here, and we'll have sort of a slight S-curve in the facility for probably 18 months.
So you're still going to wind up with 250-foot piles for the new?
Yeah. And that's probably that is a major, I would consider it a risk. I mean, we think we have it managed, right? Based on what we learned on the first piles, we changed our design. It worked. So we're very confident that it'll work again. But anytime you're drilling that far down, is relative to the other things we do, a little bit more risky from a financial and a schedule perspective. We're seeing really great progress on the main lanes north of here. This is the paving on the inside widening. And similar to the bridge at Cardiff, once these lanes are complete, we'll move the existing main lanes over one lane so that we can do some additional widening on the outside. And that's kind of what you see here. You see the contractor already doing clearing and grubbing, ready to begin construction in that area.
Last time you were, Alan, the brains of the managed lane system, I think, is everything being buried underneath as far as the electronics?
Yeah.
Here, could you show us sort of the gap and all the plumbing Is that still underneath? That's
That
all
is-
underneath there. isn't
Yes.
it?
Wasn't that one of the things that was actually removed from the budget in the,
So what was removed
We
was
talked about
the,
that, I remember,
yeah,
something
yeah.
like that.
was the
but-
congestion pricing, and that included software and gantries and sort of stuff above the ground.
oh, okay, got it.
What we
The
kept in
underground's-
our budget is the underground, so we don't
Got it.
want to have to.
Okay.
But the underground included the electronics for that, or
Yeah.
not? So,
Yep.
okay.
The vision is kind of plug and play. You'll have power and communications, those are the major things, and right, so every quarter mile or whatever, you basically put a junction box, right? So wherever we put those signs, ultimately, you just plug them in like you would at home. So,
And then Shamal, the whole thing could be managed by congestion pricing on every single lane.
and any other technology that's coming our way, right? The V2X, the vehicles talking to vehicles talking to us. We have all that infrastructure in there. We're prepared for that to come on board.
Vehicle charging as well? Is that facilitated by the?
You know, vehicle charging, we haven't really figured out that technology. So I would say no. We would have to probably retrofit that. In addition to what's happening up above on the highway, we've got some additional community enhancements and active transportation enhancements under construction. And this is an example of connecting the east and the west side of a community, right? We've talked about this before. This is at Encinitas Boulevard. And before that, you basically didn't have a sidewalk or a bike path. So now, once we're finished here by spring, March, April, in just a few months, bikes and peds will be on the other side of the column, so it'll be a lot safer for them. And then I think last quarter we were here, we talked about finishing the dredging at the lagoon. That was a major milestone, and now planting has started. And I really want to thank Brad and industry, because when we started this job, water quality was like a major risk for all of us, right? We're sitting in a lagoon. We know everyone's very sensitive, as well as they should be, to construction discharges into the lagoons. So not only have we been in an extremely sensitive area, but we've had an extreme last 2 years of high intensity rain. So I mean, even at like Cardiff, I think we got 2 inches in just a couple of hours, and the project has worked very well, and we haven't had any violations with agencies. So we're very appreciative to the effort that everyone's put into that. Another indication of the success, and like Midcoast, this is a CMGC project, and so one of the things that's allowed us to do is work with the contractor to figure out how we can get planting going earlier. Traditionally, when we build these big jobs, planting is the last thing we do. And so, you go 5 years and then you put in tiny little plants. And our vision was, how do we finish some of these slopes earlier and start the planting 2 or 3 years earlier, so that they have a chance to grow up, and the contractor can maintain them and get them going. And so you're already seeing the Torrey pines being planted on the slopes, and we're working with contractor and their subcontractors to figure out how we can enhance the soil and get them growing a little bit faster. So that's another good success of the CMGC. So last but not least is that piece that we just got the permit for. So the good news is we're finished design. It's fully cleared from a permit perspective. Still the question mark is, the money that we have as a region programmed with the state of California is out a couple of years based on their cash flow. We asked last month that they advance it 2 years. We expect to hear from them this month, I should say. What are the factors that allow them to say yes is kind of how the other counties are doing. So if everyone's delivering on time, it may be problematic for us. But our vision was, hey, be there and hope that someone fails, and we'll move their money up, and they can have our later money later on. So we should know that by the end of the month, and we can report back at the next time we meet. But again, that's one lane each direction, express lanes to 78. It also has some operational improvements. Some auxiliary lanes between Poinsettia and Cannon in the Carlsbad area, as well as some active transportation, like we're doing at Encinitas and Santa Fe, where we would be doing the same thing in Carlsbad at Chestnut. and some additional sound walls. And like you see the fiber optics, which is the communications stuff that we talked about. So in a nutshell, that's this quarter's presentation. Any questions?
I have a question. Are you guys involved in the Del Mar tracks issue
Yes.
with the train?
The bluffs.
The bluff?
We all are involved, yes.
Can you give us any color on that? What's going on there?
I can give you an update on
Do you mind, so the microphones can hear
Oh.
better? Thank you.
Okay, I'm calling, no, I'm not. Again, John Haggerty. Yeah, over the Thanksgiving holiday, we had intense rains on the bluff. The bluffs in themselves didn't fail. The drainage system was overwhelmed, and water came over in 2 locations at 14th and 15th Street and eroded the top of the bluffs. Because of the nature of how that happened very quickly, our Mid-Coast CMGC, MCTC, has rail equipment and everything they needed, so North County asked us to mobilize them. So they went out and repaired one of those locations just by sitting on a track, and basically what had happened is we already have a series of piles in there protecting the railroad. So the idea was that as the bluffs retreat, the railroad would be protected in its most vulnerable locations. Well, these are the locations we already had piles in, so they just came in and put a retaining wall in at the 14th Street location, and then 2 weeks later they went back and they finished the work at the 15th Street location. So if you're out there now, what you're going to see is basically a shotcrete wall. And then we are going to our board on Friday, and we will approve that emergency work. And with that, North County also asked us as Sandag to go ahead and spend some additional work doing some preventative work on a drainage structure, the drainage system above along the railroad. So that's going to be some near-term work that we're accomplishing. And then we have a Del Mar Bluffs 4 project that is underway right now to do some additional protection and drainage improvements on the bluff. And then we're trying to expedite Del Mar Bluffs. We call it 5 and 6, but we don't know exactly what that will be. But we're looking at and have some planned additional bluff reinforcement, and we've got to eventually at some point need to do some reinforcement at the toe of the slope. All of this is just to keep the railroad 100% safe and in operation until eventually the railroad can get relocated off the bluff.
And I was just going to quickly on that 5 big moves. Is that relocation going to be part of the 5 big moves?
Yeah, it's part of that big transit first move, but we haven't identified all those projects. So actually, Colleen is putting together all of
because that would
what
be a
those
huge expense that would be added to the tax measure, I guess. If in fact that was part of the plan, but.
Yeah, so we don't really exactly know right now. And then actually the last thing that we're telling the board we're going to do on Friday is we do have some additional money that Sandag's pitching in, and the state is looking to provide some additional funds so we can do that long-term planning about where the best location is and how we're going to move the train off the bluffs. And so all that's underway. I think the storm has expedited the need to do that, but we're certainly moving forward with all of that.
And I would just add from a state perspective, I mean, the state recognizes how important the line is. Hassan has been working with Secretary Kim, who's Secretary of CalSTA, as well as Commissioner Kehoe, Senator Atkins, and they called a working group. And we had our first meeting in mid-December, I think right before Christmas.
Yeah, it's kind of forming that group.
And that group is going to meet again in January 21st. So it's multi-agency. It's got the regulatory agencies. It's got the the owners together. It's got the people who can fund these additional projects together. And the idea is to meet here and come up with a plan from a state perspective and see how we can all move forward. So I think that's important that the Secretary has engaged.
Yeah, because we're going to need all that support in order to move this through much more quickly than would be a typical timeline, especially working on the coastal bluff.
Thank you.
Just out of curiosity, does Amtrak have a role with regard to the tracks maintenance, or are they just users and the track maintenance is not part of their something they have to worry about as much.
No, Amtrak and BNSF don't have any responsibility for track maintenance. It's all with North County. Whether they have some arrangement with them to contribute to that, I'm not aware of that, but that would be the arrangement. But North County does maintain the rail.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. So that concludes item 13. 14, I believe, is not an issue. No public comment at this point. So item 15, the upcoming meetings.
Just have a correction there, so the February 12th, not the 13th, so that's a typo.
It'll be the 12th. All right. And with that, any final comments for the greater good from anyone? No? Is it a motion to adjourn, or do we simply adjourn?
No, simply adjourn.
We are adjourned. Thank you very much.
So it is the chair.
Testing, ITAC committee, January 8th, 2020.
January ITAC meeting. I think this is all we're going to get in the way of members. We had some absences noted, but we do have a quorum, or are we done?
We did.
So we're going to go ahead and move forward with the meeting. Do we have any speaker slips? Perfect. All right, so first item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from our last meeting.
I'll move to approve.
We have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. All those in favor of approving the minutes? That would be a unanimous vote. We do not have any speaker slips, so there won't be any public comment. I understand that the director is committed, so we won't be getting a director's report from the director himself, but visiting dignitaries will fill in.
Thank you. So I'm Colleen Clemenson, the Director of Regional Planning here at Sandag, and Jose asked me just to fill in on a couple of things that Hassan would usually report on to all of you. And one is just our work with the airport and the Navy on the potential central mobility hub and connection to the airport. And so just a couple of things to update you on Thursday, tomorrow, the Airport Authority will be considering their final environmental document for the revamp of Terminal 1. And as part of their environmental mitigation, they are setting aside funding to look at transit improvements that would make a direct connection from the airport to a potential mobility hub, whether that would be at the Navwar site or another potential location within that area. So that's a lot of progress that we've made, and Sandag, along with the Port of San Diego, the Airport Authority, and the City of San Diego are working on a memorandum of understanding to make sure that we put all the pieces in place to ensure that that mitigation actually occurs. So there's a lot of additional work that needs to be done to determine exactly how that connection would be made, whether it's above ground or below ground. But the work that we've been doing with the Navy has been outstanding, and we're making a lot of progress working with them on the potential redevelopment of the site, and there'll be more news coming about that in the next couple weeks. So that's one item. And the other is just work underway with our regional plan. And so I think Hassan has probably reported here to this group that we plan to release the draft vision for that plan at the end of March. And we're still working on exactly what that date will be. But our goal is for that to be on a Thursday late afternoon so that it's more open to the public, easier for people to attend. And we're looking for a central location, so a venue that could accommodate a large group of people so that we can make that presentation to our board and then also engage the public in that. And so we certainly will let all of you know and hope that you're able to attend that as well. And leading up to the release of the draft vision, we're doing some informational briefings with the board of directors just on the San Diego economy, what we're hearing from the major economic sectors on what they see the transportation needs are for the region, and so making sure we're aligning with that, how we're using data to identify the appropriate transportation solutions. So I think that's something that we've talked about here previously as well, that we've had a long list of projects that have been in our plans for years, and are those really the right projects, given newer technologies and other options, and really some of the challenges of widening roadways? Are there other options to do to the transportation improvements we've been thinking about for a while? So anyway, that's the report. I'm happy to answer any questions, and Hassan is in Sacramento today, if I'm not
Yes.
mistaken. I was trying to, it looks like he has some meetings with Caltrans and CalCog, so the other partner agencies that do things like sandbag throughout the state. So that's it.
Colleen?
Yeah.
Thank you for being here. It's nice to see you again.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ariana was nice enough to give us the dates for the board retreat.
Yeah.
I think they left to give us the dates, 11 through 13. And some of us had a chance over the years to go to it.
Yeah.
Any comments or thoughts on how that it's going to run this year differently? Because it at least seems to be a little later than normal. Different
Yeah.
than just any thoughts?
The planning of that is underway right now with our board chair and vice chair, so they're really kind of leading the work on that agenda. So it'll be up to them to decide, and I think it's still in the works. The only thing I do know is that it's going to be held at Viejas on those dates, and so that, at least we know the location. Some of the feedback we've had so far is that I think the board wants to have a lot of time to kind of get to know each other better, so it would be maybe more of that as opposed to say decision-making on particular issues. But that's just what we know so far, and so there's more to come.
I want to tell you, you've always done a great job at those. Personally, I've seen you in action on some of those. You've always, you're all